In a world where most people watch movies and then forget about them, 3 brave heroes join forces to watch them again and then talk about them. Join them in their epic journey as they go back in time, a decade and beyond, to revisit and break down films from a vast array of genres. Do these movies hold up over time? Are they classics? Find out on Retro Movie Roundtable. Starring your hosts, Bryan Frye, Chad Robinson, and Russell Guest. Coming now to headphones in your ears.
The episode you're about to listen to is of lower sound quality than you're used to hearing on the show. The show was actually lost, and a backup recording through Skype is all we had to work with. Luckily, the episode was not lost, and you can listen to it now. Again, we apologize for the lower sound recording. At times it'll cut out, but bear with us. It's still a good listen, and it's a great way to finish out the year that was 2019. For anybody who wants to hear the full review, going back from the full set of 43 movies, we have all of that available on the Patreon page, so please go check that out. It's a great way to support the show, and it's a super long listen, so we put in there the top 20 because we think that's what people are going to want to hear the most, but we know there are a lot of hardcore fans out there, and so we're looking for people to help support the show, so please go check out our Patreon page, and you'll be able to hear the full countdown there.
I'm doing well, guys. Last movie I saw was Six Underground, Netflix movie starring Ryan Reynolds. Yeah, I want to see that. You know, I never got a chance to see Ad Astra, and I really wanted to see that one. I actually had a weird thought about this when I first saw the preview for Ad Astra. I was like, "Is this Space Cowboys too?" Because Donald Glover is sending someone out to find Tommy Lee Jones, and I'm like, "Holy crap! This is Space Cowboys too." DC's still trying desperately hard to come up with a hit movie. I would say that my New Year's resolution every year is to really maintain myself better. I still have like 1 week where I treat my body like an amusement park, and then 1 week when, I'm actually a human being. So, yeah, I know that's probably a cliche one, but every year I try to get a little bit better at it.
I love the dark humor in general. It's just a sort of genre of movie that it's kind of a sweet spot for me. I love that acting. It's the characters are so much fun. I love the Tim Burton-esque feel to it. This was just an enjoyable movie.
Chad, you had this one the lowest.
I did. I liked that this was a horror genre movie, but I just didn't. I didn't like it enough. The effects struck me as kind of cheap.
Calling her cheap?
I am.
It's funny you say that. It was praised for its visual effects at the time.
Yeah, things don't always age well.
Yeah. I think it's an Oscar winner if I recall.
Oh no.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, for visual effects, I believe.
Yeah, I think that hole where I don't remember which one of them got a hole shot through the middle
holes.
of them,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think they really did a good job. That was a really fun scene. That's what sticks out in my mind in terms of visual effects.
Brian, you're closer to Chad on this one. You had this one at 29. What was your take on Death Becomes Her?
My wife likes this movie definitely more than I do. It's fine. It's very Tim Burton-y. I like that part of it. It scratches some itches, but it's not like the back scratcher.
And I'm at number 15, so I'm closer to Mary on this one. I really enjoyed this one. This was my first time doing it, actually, and I just was taken aback by not sure what we were going to get it for, and it went a whole other direction than I thought it would. And I had a lot of fun with this one as it continued to unfold, and just so many really good exaggerated moments, and Bruce Willis just played his part to such an extreme. Even simple things like the interchange between him and the doctor when he finds out his wife is dead, and he's like, "Where is she?" In the morgue. The morgue. She'll be furious. There were just such animated moments from Bruce Willis that I loved it. And there was good chemistry between the front ladies as well. The Prestige from 2006 comes in at number 19. Brian, you had this one the highest at number 14.
Fantastic cast, very cool plot. I'm such a sucker for Tesla, Edison, back and forth, and how they've basically showed a different grudge match between two magicians as opposed to kind of what was going on in Tesla's life, but they still kind of worked him in there. It was kind of fun. And then, it's magic.
It is magic. Mary, you had this one the lowest at 29. was your take on The Prestige by Christopher Nolan?
Oh, I really enjoyed this film. I think it just has to do with there's so many good movies still on our list to come. So no knock to this movie at all. I really like it.
I have a lot of these moments as well where it's just too good to. So sorry, the competition is just so good it had to be somewhere. So. I had this one similar to you at 26. And it also demands multiple viewings. So if you watch this one the first time, you're going to come away a little bit unfulfilled. It actually thrives on watch 2, 3, and 4. So I actually enjoyed it more. This was fun to return to because I had a much higher appreciation for it this time. Chad, you had The Prestige up where Bryan had it at around 16.
I loved it the first time I saw it. There are some movies that I enjoyed more on this list, but it's pretty high for me. And I agree, it definitely gets more value the second time, but I was enthralled throughout the movie, even the first time I saw it.
As we move up to number 18, moving up towards the top, this is exciting. Now, I know somebody's in particular is going to be very excited because, Bryan, you have The Three Musketeers at number 2 on your countdown.
This is a movie that just makes me happy every time I see it, and I watch it a lot. It's one of those early and often kind of movies for me. Love the cast, love the jokes, love the action. There should have been more of these.
You want more Musketeers, like 5 Musketeers?
I want 5 Musketeer movies with this cast.
At the other end, I have this one the lowest. I'm going to be the down voter on this one. I have this one at 32. And very similar to what Mary just said, I had a lot of fun coming back to this movie. I hadn't seen it in years, and it was really fun to return to. It just was one of those ones where it doesn't quite have the depth that some of these other movies would later have. So had fun with it. Totally would watch it again. I will watch it again, but it fell at 32. So 32 sounds low, but in reality, it's actually still strong for me. So Chad, The Three Musketeers.
I smile and have a good time throughout this entire movie. I think it's one of those that if I caught it, I would sit down and watch it and have a good time every time. But it's not going to be upper echelon for me.
Yeah, and Mary, you had The Three Musketeers at number 18.
I hadn't seen this movie before, which is surprising because it's definitely my kind of movie. It's got that sort of just fun adventure thing going for it, and it was really enjoyable. Yeah, I can't believe I never saw this before.
We're going to move up towards probably one of the most controversial ones that has one of the greatest stratifications on this one. We're going to go to Mr. Nobody from 2009. This is a fantastic movie. I have it at number 4 on my list, and it's one of those movies that every time I watch it, I just can't stop but think on my own life.
Chad is currently shaking his head even as this movie comes up.
You wait your turn. I'm gonna build this movie up first. It's one of those movies that is probably the most thought-provoking movie we did this year. It's the one that I find myself reflecting on my own life and the decisions that you make and all the impact and the things around you and the impact that you make on the world around you. It's such an interesting movie. It's beautifully acted. Diane Kruger and Jared Leto play multiple versions of themselves, and it's just such an interesting movie. In the same way that Prestige benefits from multiple watchings, this movie is good the first time, but you have no idea how good it is until you watch it 3, 4, 5 times. We got the extended edition Blu-ray because it's a long movie to begin with, and it's just one of those ones that I will always return to this one, and I love it. It's a science fiction. It's a drama, too. Now, Chad, why don't you bring balance to the world with your number 42 ranking?
Yes, this is second to last for me. Full disclosure, I do not like your...
Good.
Yes, I'm letting the hate flow through me. I do not like Jared Leto, and after watching this movie for 2.5 hours of my life, I honestly started to question whether I like movies at all.
Brutal.
Best quote of the episode.
So I saw where this movie was going very quickly. And through all the twists and turns, I didn't care because I was just waiting for it to get to the point. And it did, and the point just was a thud. And so, yeah.
It's okay. And Bryan, you're right in the middle there. So you're at 26. What was your take on Mr. Nobody?
I put this movie at 26 because I wanted to give the plot and the other actors the benefit of my commiseration with having to work with Jared Leto. It wasn't a bad movie. And I give Jared Leto a lot of crap, but that's because I hate him. So, this one was really hurt by the primary actor. I just, every time I see his face, he just exudes pretentiousness, and I can't get past it. I have a hard time. Like, it broke my heart that he had a part in Blade Runner 2049. Thank God he didn't have much screen time. I mean, that would have been like a big deal breaker for me. If you saw like the pictures on magazines with him wearing carpets and stuff, like this guy, like, I can't separate him from himself. I cannot willingly suspend my belief that he's just, and it, just, I don't know, drives me nuts. Anyway.
Well done, apprentice. Well done.
So half the people on this podcast feel strongly against Jared Leto. Did he kick your dog or something?
Might have. Just like the Suicide Squad, he mailed used condoms to our house.
It was 2002 when he came to Charleston, West Virginia and opened for Incubus and came out and made fun of West Virginia for 15 minutes and then nobody cheered for him and he pouted and left the stage.
Yeah, that was terrible.
That kicked it off.
Okay.
So it was right. Game on Jared Leto hate. And I didn't even know who he was at the time, but then as he got popular, I was like, no!
So now Mary's got to be our foil here. Mary, after all of that.
Mary, why don't you bring us full circle?
Strong opinions about him. The only experience I have with his acting is this movie and Blade Runner. I didn't have any problem with him in this role, and it certainly didn't affect my enjoyment of the movie. I tend to really like movies that you can watch and rewatch, and every time you watch it, there's something that you hadn't seen before, and I love that about this movie. There's so much detail in it, and there's such a high level of art in terms of the filmmaking. To me, I really get into that kind of thing, and this really is that kind of nice indie film quality for me, and I like a movie that can make me think. You know, I was finding myself, after watching it the first time, weeks later, thinking about all the different decisions I made in my life and how my life might have ended up differently had I made different decisions at different points. So, and there aren't that many movies that I would contemplate on that much after having watched it. So for that, that's why I rank this movie highly.
Now, Jared Leto plays 13 different characters in this movie. Chad, is there one that you hated most?
The only one I liked was the old man.
He likes one. All right.
He didn't really talk as the old man.
Oh, he said all kinds of things, but yeah, he was funny. If you didn't like that, then maybe you'll like this next one. We're going to go on to this next movie. This is Big, Tom Hanks. It's a 1988 movie, and I have this one the highest as well. So this is another one in my top 5. I'm the high voter on this one. I gave this one at number 3.
Wow.
This is just one of those movies that make me feel like a kid again, and it shows you the joy of being a kid, and it also kind of makes you, as an adult, kind of appreciate that inner kid that's in all of us. It's also that realization when you're a kid that you want to be grown up, and then it's that realization that it's not everything it cracked up to be all the time. I mean, there's good parts about it, and there's bad parts about it. This movie handled that so beautifully, and it's funny. Tom Hanks is just so charismatic in the role, whether it's eating a tiny little cocktail corn or nailing these parts where he just doesn't get adult language that's thrown at his way, where he's taking it on the first level, not an innuendo. And it's just brilliant, funny stuff that's written throughout there. And it's got a big heart in it, too. So a lot to love about this movie. It's the kind of movie that you'll absolutely be roped into. If you see one scene of it, you just want to sit down and watch the whole thing. At number 39, Brian, you might feel a little bit differently.
No, this is a super funny movie. It's a feel-good movie, and it's a movie I enjoyed, but this movie has very, very little rewatchability for me. I think it's one of those, like, once you've seen it, that's probably fine. I'm sure other people disagree, but that's just like a wheelhouse in terms of what I like to watch on my free time versus, things I watch for the podcast versus things I just feel like I need to watch at least once for, posterity's sake. So this just is a victim of my biases toward movies that are rewatchable versus just watchable. No disrespect to Tom Hanks. He did a great job. It's a good movie.
Clearly, this neighborhood of your countdown is far less visceral than Chad's. Your ranking is in the neighborhood of where his Mr. Nobody ranking was, and your response
there's no
was
hate.
Wildly more even keel.
Yeah. No hate.
No, that's good. That's good. I'm glad to hear that. I was a little worried when I saw 39, but that was a very kind 39. Number 22 is where you have this movie, Chad. Where are you on Big?
I still really enjoy it. I think it's got a lot of memorable moments, and Tom Hanks is wonderful. But honestly, revisiting it, it brought up some problematic themes, and we discussed this a little in the podcast, but we can't spoil too much, but it has problems right now.
I could deal with it.
Yeah,
It's a comedy, man. You gotta roll with it and have fun.
Chad, how do you feel about Baby It's Cold Outside?
that's been debated to death.
Mary, you have Big at 10.
Big is just one of those movies I remember really fondly as a kid, and I hold as an adult as well. And Danny Elfman's score just brings the whole thing together. I think this is a classic.
Sleuth is the next one at 15. This is a 1972 movie, and I have this one the highest again. Boy, I'm on a roll for ranking these highest. This is 3 in a row. I have this at number 12. And this was a fun, mind-bending movie. I didn't see what was coming. For one, when you get started with this, when you think it's going a certain direction, and then the tone changes, and it changes a few times more past that. And it's always fun to see how the tenor of this movie changes. And by the time it finishes, it actually finishes in a much darker realm. And so it's playful at times, and it's just a really fun acting performance between two juggernauts of Michael Caine and Laurence Olivier. And it's just so much fun to watch. And I recommend it. It's one of those movies that's been forgotten, but it got really good ratings at the time. It's based on a play. They went back and remade it, and we talked about the remake in 2007. I didn't think that captured the magic. It's stylish, and I like the style of that movie a lot. But it becomes more rushed, and I prefer the slow burn of the original 72 movie. Chad, you have this one at 23.
Yeah, I really liked the chemistry of the two leads. I did see where it was going, and so that
Which of the 5 times? Because it changed a lot of times.
I was not fooled, I'll just say that. But I still had a good time, and it was a fun ride.
Mary, you have this one at 17.
Yeah, I hadn't seen this one until watching it for the podcast. It was just really pleasantly surprised and almost felt like I was watching a play. I really liked how the story played out, and I really enjoy a good story.
Bryan, you have this one at 22.
Really good movie in terms of people wanting to watch, more classic film, call it pre-1985 kind of stuff. I would recommend this one. This is definitely my kind of movie. The only thing that it suffered from was just movies I like more in front of it.
We're going to go up to number 14, where we have The Shining, a Stanley Kubrick masterpiece from 1980. Bryan, you have this one the highest at number 5. Why don't you go first?
To this day, I kind of want to have twins just to use it to screw with people who stay at my house. Solely from this movie. And I've told Jess this. She was like, that's not a good reason to have twins. And I was like, yep, but I'll do it.
She's right.
Yeah. Listen, I hear you. It just would be a lot of fun for me. So anyway, there's so many Hallmark creepy moments in this that you can earmark for, like the Horror Hall of Fame. And I don't know. I really enjoy it. Jack Nicholson's a creepy man.
Now, Chad, you're a big horror fan. Were you a fan of this one?
I am not.
You have this one at number 40, I see. This is a bit of a surprise, given that you're a big fan of the horror genre.
We've talked about this in other podcasts, but I was banned from this podcast because we try not to go to Negative Town, and I don't like The Shining.
Won't you take me down to Negative Town?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of my disdain for this movie is because it keeps being, in my opinion, overrated. I don't find it scary whatsoever, and I find 2/3 of the main cast miscast. I don't like Shelley Duvall, and I don't like Jack Nicholson in this movie. Jack Nicholson just starts off.
Yeah, but the guy who runs
creepy.
the lodge is pretty cool, right?
The guy that calls him Doc?
No, I meant the guy who hires him at the very beginning in the first 2 minutes of the movie. Sorry,
no,
I was being smart.
Okay, no. Yeah, it's just a miss for me, and I get more and more frustrated as it's ranked. I've even seen it ranked as the number 1 horror movie of all time, and so I tend to have some pushback against that. So The cast doesn't work for me. The scares don't work for me. Nothing on this movie works.
Well, I guess you and Stephen King are in a boat together.
Yep.
Mary, you like this one a good bit more. It looks like you have it at number 13.
So, the first time I saw this movie years ago probably was around Halloween time, and the way this movie is marketed and the cover of the DVD, and I thought I was getting into a slasher movie. So I was very prepared for one type of movie, and it is not that. So when I rewatched it this time, I knew I was in for a very different kind of movie. I knew I was in for a more artful film that's more about subtleties and suspense, and I enjoyed it a whole lot more. So I would say that my view of this movie has changed over the years.
I have this movie at number 9. I just was a big fan of this movie, and my appreciation for it has grown over the years as well. It's been more gradual. I didn't necessarily get why it was a masterpiece at first, but certainly after studying it for the podcast. I just think that it's one of those, it is a classic for me. It's one of those ones that I know people are going to be watching this one in 50 years from now. Number 13, first episode we did together as 3 hosts, Ben-Hur from 1952. Brian, you're always acting like you like longer movies. You got it here, but first let's hear from Chad because you have this one at number 4.
I'd never seen Ben-Hur. Well, at least not in this format. I'd seen it on TV, but I didn't remember it being the epic that we wound up watching. So it must have been some edited version or something like that, but it's a masterpiece. Everything about the movie worked for me, and reading about it just gave me a further appreciation of what was accomplished, and it's stunning.
It was an absolute spectacle for sure. Brian, you have this one at number 38. That's the lowest of us, which I recall like this movie a good bit in the actual podcast. What led to the 38 ranking?
This is a complete and total victim of rewatchability. This is the opposite end of the spectrum of I want it to be longer. This one actually could have been quite a bit shorter. It really is just a victim of rewatchability. I agree with Chad. It is an epic. It's just not an epic I care to watch a lot.
That's fair.
Just super succinct. It's really just, that's my only problem with it.
Yeah, it's over 3 hours long.
Oh, yeah.
Mary, you have this one at 14.
I think this movie did a lot of things for the first time and really set some bars pretty high for movies to come after it, particularly things like the epic chariot scenes. And for me, the score was revolutionary. I think that I could see where other scores that I love so much that have been done later probably drew some inspiration from the epicness of that score. And I think that it just feels like an important moment in movie history for the way we watch movies now.
I have this one at number 10, and this was my first time to it. And like Brian, I might not be fast to go back to it simply because I have to carve out a substantial chunk of my day. But on the other hand, it's really good. And I just loved the arc. And when you say epic, this truly lives it. Like, it is big in the production. You don't see that scale brought to movies. Even now, necessarily, it's really cool to see how real it is, meaning they had to do this obviously with all practical effects. And so in a way, I also, like Chad, gained a big appreciation for what all went into making it. It's a lot harder than wave your hands with the zeros and ones today. As we open to number 12, one of the older movies we did this year from 1941, The Maltese Falcon. Now, Brian, you have this one at number 9.
Yeah, I love this movie. This is, again, one of those ones that if you have friends or family who are resistant to watching older movies, this is like, I would just hold this in front of their face and be like, this one right here. Honestly, I wish I could have put it higher. It comes down to, if you put 10 movies in front of me and told me, put these in order of which you'd want to watch first to last, it comes in at number 9 in this grouping.
It's a strong class. We had a lot of good movies this year. Mary, you have this one at 27. Still pretty high, but that's the lowest of the bunch here.
Yeah, I have a little bit of trouble with this movie because the storyline's very interesting, but I kept getting pulled out of it by the archaic way the women in the film are treated. It detracts from it. And
Run along and play, kid.
Yeah, he literally told a female character to run along. That's going to harm my enjoyment of a movie. And yeah, I see how this is a classic, but it's at the same time a painful one.
On a similar note, though, they kept calling the main female role in this like, she's a knockout. I'm like, well. Not even close.
That's generous, but yeah.
It's very generous. Now, Chad, you have this one at 17. What was your take?
I never seen it, and I'm glad I did. You're absolutely right that it's a classic, and it's one that I would recommend people revisit. Mary may be right with time not being kind to some of the treatment of its characters, but overall, just the story's fascinating, and I love where it took me.
In fairness, that character is unkind to everybody.
He's a jerk. You're right.
Yeah, for sure. And I have this movie at number 13. I loved it as well. I love the noir aspect. I like the mysterious thing where you're kind of trying to figure out what is going on, who's telling the truth, what's in play, what is this really all leading up to. And you know what? It builds up to a really great climax. And like we mentioned before, I like this quality. Sleuth had this as well. Sleuth was written to be a play. This has a play-like quality that I really enjoyed. It has a very tight, confined area, and the dialogue's really sharp. And that's something that I think a movie that, obviously didn't have effects and stuff like that in its favor thrived on. And I think that's something that I'd like to see more movies come back to now. It's really great. I think you're only hoping to get a movie like this to go more from the indie movie route where there are such great restrictions and constraints. E.T. from 1982 comes in at number 11. I have this one the highest, at number 6. This is just an absolute joy to watch. It's one of those ones that you just can't help but get a huge smile on your face. There's so many magical moments on this one, whether it be the Reese's Pieces, whether it be little Drew Barrymore screaming at E.T. and then E.T. being scared, just as equally scared of her, and him screaming at her. The magic of the bicycle going over the moon. Steven Spielberg put himself in the upper echelon of directors, and this is with this movie, in my opinion. He's just got a great career, but this is really one of the ones that I just think of that he touches people at all ages. I enjoyed it as a kid. I enjoy it now. I'm pretty sure I'll enjoy it as an old man. And it's one of those ones that it's just absolutely magical that he created this character that showed you that aliens aren't always out to hurt you. That's a really cool aspect to take. There's a lot of heart in this. And I think that I am the sentimentalist of the bunch. And so that heartwarming aspect is what I love so much about it. Now, Brian, you have this pretty high yourself at 23. What was your take?
I don't have a whole lot to add to that. That was a pretty good wrap up of what makes this movie awesome. It does suffer a little bit from rewatchability for me. I don't typically, grab for this type of movie as a rewatch for me, but at the same time, there's no denying, the warm and fuzzies it gives you. So yeah, 23 and nothing but compliments.
Mary, you're close to Brian when you have this one at number 20. Surprised it's not higher for you. You're a big science fiction fan.
I'm not sure I hold it in quite the high esteem that others do. I certainly enjoy the movie. I actually didn't like it at all as a child. I was frightened by E.T. I know you say, yeah, he was supposed to be the good guy.
Well, he's cute.
Yeah, and he is, but he's not that cute. In my opinion.
He scared my daughter too. It's fine.
Yeah. It just he's a little bit creepy looking.
Did you get to the part where he fixes her ouch by touching her finger?
It's all kind of scary. There's all kinds of
helps, right?
cute, fuzzy aliens. What about like Ewoks?
What you didn't know is 9 months later, an alien burst out of her chest.
That's my context as a 4-year-old me.
All it took was one finger touch.
Yeah, Ewoks, Yoda, and E.T. These are the upper echelon of cute aliens for sure.
To my daughter, she's still a little young, so she won't remember it. We'll have to revisit it again. But it was interesting watching her reactions of not really knowing how to deal with this strange alien on screen, and then is it okay? Is it not okay? Because it kind of starts off like a horror movie.
It does, yeah.
There's a lot of horror movie overtones and sound like Close Encounters. That was interesting, watching someone with no context of E.T. But
that is probably exactly why I was frightened of it at age 4. This is the scary thing that's in this shed, and you don't know if he's going to be okay or not.
They do a similar thing with Yoda. When you first meet Yoda in Dagobah, you don't know if he's going to lead you into your peril.
Yeah, but he's adorable.
You don't know at first. You don't know if he's troublesome. He's getting into stuff. Is he just going to be a hindrance? But it turns out he's really awesome, and he can lift stuff with his mind, which happens to also be something E.T. can do.
The Ewoks tried to eat Han Solo, so
that is also true.
But they're cute doing it. There's a air of horror film about the beginning of
Murder
E.T.
bears.
Yeah.
Oh no. All right, so we're gonna move forward to 2001's Rat Race, and
Oh no.
this is my number one. Sorry, so this is my number 2 movie, and it's just one of these movies that I absolutely love. Perhaps irrationally so, but I just love this movie. I have had such great times watching this movie with my family, with my friends. Over the years, I've given it to a number of people, and I've just had so many fun times watching it with people. And it's one of those ones where some of it's aged a little bit, but for the most part, the core of this movie is really enduring quite well. And I know that the ratings aren't as high, but this just hits me in all kinds of my funny spots. There's different brands of humor here. It's played by a series of actors I really enjoy, and it's really cleverly directed because there's a different kind of writing with each aspect of this journey, because it's a treasure hunt and everybody's fighting to everybody. It's a race for everybody to get to this treasure at the same time. And it's so funny to see all these different aspects, and they make you laugh in one way, and then they turn it to the next scene and they make you laugh in a completely different way. And that's a very rewarding thing that I can't think of many movies doing, and it's a hard thing to even pursue. So credit to this movie on that one.
Yeah. How could anyone ever dislike this movie, Brian?
Well, I was gonna say the ratings for this are in the middle, and so let's figure out the other end of the spectrum. For every me that's out there, there's a Brian out there. Brian, explain yourself.
This I had to reach deep. I was actually writing like a dissertation on why I didn't like this movie for this podcast, and I was having a hard time coming up with a really succinct, like nailing down like exactly what I hated. And then I found something on the internet. So hats off to Mike McGranahan. I'm going to use a couple little snippets here from his. This movie is nothing but a piece of forced whacking, or one piece of forced wackiness after another. Rat Race is a throwback to those old films like It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World, The Great Race, and The Cannonball Run. The problem is that those movies were never any good to begin with.
Boo this man.
When you take so many comedians and shove them into the same movie, jealousy breaks out. Everyone wants to be the funniest one in the movie, so they all start playing to the camera, overacting, and generally embarrassing themselves. Compounding the problem is that Rat Race features stars of dubious talent, Kathy Najimy and John Lovitz, and stars who have talent but often use it poorly, Whoopi Goldberg, alongside stars of indisputable talent who are slumming by being here, John Cleese and Cuba Gooding Jr. A more consistently sterling cast wouldn't have helped considerably. The screenplay is just that atrocious, but maybe it would have been a start.
Well, thank you for taking the heat off my hot take of The Shining.
I agree with like 80% of that.
Okay, I'm hurt by that. But
we're all sadder in this room right now.
Yeah, we have to move forward though. And Chad, you have this at number 9, which is really high.
It's something I saw actually in theaters, and it caught me so off guard. And I'm like you, Russell. I show this to people that I care about, and I want them to enjoy it. And for the most part, they have, with one very, very flawed experiment with my parents notwithstanding.
And one of your best friends, Brian.
Yes, yes.
Everybody needs to realize this is the same guy that likes all of the Sith Lords, okay? So him showing this to his friends and family is not an act of kindness.
Oh, but yeah, my parents do agree with Brian.
Well, until this podcast, I've not heard of anyone not liking this movie. My family enjoys it quite a bit. This is probably one of their favorite comedies, and I think it's got an ability to have a clean enough humor that you can show it to pretty much anybody of any age, and they're going to find at least parts of the movie funny. I would say this is probably the funniest movie I have ever seen. It's definitely the movie I've laughed the hardest in.
And I like all those other movies that that guy dissed too. It's a Mad, Mad, Mad.
Yeah,
World.
I like all of those movies.
Cannonball Run.
Yeah,
I like those.
So it's funny. It's possible without this 42 blemish on these rankings. It's very possible Rat Race could have gone on to win out this year's rankings. But don't worry. That's why the law of averages is here. And Brian
has brought balance to the force.
Yes.
I say no.
There won't be any more rankings going forward that are anywhere close to that low. So that is the highest of the outlier, I should say.
You shall not pass.
Unforgiven comes in at number 9. This is a 1992 Oscar winner. Brian, you have this highest at number 8.
This is one of my favorite Westerns. I understand that with our listenership, I feel like Westerns at times get overlooked as your grandfather's movies. I highly recommend this one to anybody who, wants to branch out into a genre that maybe they're not as familiar with. This is a dark movie, and I think it's phenomenal.
I agree. It's an underappreciated genre, and just because if your grandfathers liked it, maybe they were onto something. This was a fun one. Let's go to Mary. You're at number 19.
Yeah, Clint Eastwood was able to really recapture the magic of westerns in a modern way, and kind of this is a little bit of a modern take on a western, but it still has that same nostalgic feeling to it. It's very enjoyable.
Now, Chad, you have this one at number 15.
Yes, this was my favorite of the two westerns that we watched. I'd never seen it before, and I really, really enjoyed Clint Eastwood's performance. I enjoyed the story. My one complaint that kept it from being maybe top 10 was the climactic scene. I felt like it wasn't
big enough.
Yeah, it wasn't big enough or well shot. I felt like enough people had the opportunity to fire back and didn't. So it was just how that scene was shot that bothered me.
I made a comment similar to that on the show, and I agree to some extent, but it is still a very good Western, and I have this at 14. It's unique. Again, I haven't been that versed in Westerns, and this one makes me say, I do want to go deeper into this. It was fun to see the Oscars also award a movie like this. This doesn't seem like the kind of thing that the Oscars would come praising.
Like True Grit.
Miracle comes in next at 2004. Brian, you have this highest at number 6.
There isn't a bad hockey movie. That's all I gotta say.
Mighty Ducks 3?
Nope, I'll still watch it.
Yeah,
I'll still watch it.
Keenan's in it.
Yeah, Knuckle Puck, man.
Yeah.
So Brian just likes his hockey movies and tweed jackets.
Yeah.
Number 21 is where you put this one, Mary. That's high, but just wanted to see what your take was on Miracle.
I really enjoyed it. I'm a fan of hockey, and I think this really captured some of the magic of the sport. Yeah, I definitely recommend this movie. I'm not one for sports movies usually, but I do like this one.
Chad, you have this at 12.
Yeah, it's Rudy on ice. I love it.
I enjoyed the true story component of this, and it's one of the most inspiring underdog stories in sports. I love the Olympics, and it was one of those movies that Mary put it well when she said, I think it captures the magic and the electric nature. It's just well shot, like particularly the later scenes in this make you aware how electric and how fast the game is. They capture that magic. Singing in the Rain is our next movie. Now, Ched, this is the number one movie for you. This is the first number one movie to come out so far.
Makes me sad that it's this slow. Yes, Singing in the Rain is a masterpiece. It was something that I was first introduced to in a music caprice class. Obviously, I appreciated it. I've shared it with as many people as I can. I love musicals, and this is, in my opinion, the best musical ever made. The cast is charming, their chemistry is off the charts, and Gene Kelly just produces a masterwork through this.
Mary, you have this pretty high, 26, but it's the low ranking on this one. What was your take on Singing in the Rain?
I think it's the first time I had seen this movie all the way through. I feel like it's one that would be just randomly on TV growing up, and I'd seen bits and pieces of it. So it was the first time watching it in one shot. I think that it is a classic.
I have this one at number 11, and I felt like it was just a little unfocused because it was very charming. It was very funny, and then it takes an artistic turn, and then there's also some asides in the middle. And so this loose structure somehow maybe didn't all make it come together, but what everything else about it was super charming. I loved the music. It was compelling. It was one of those things to watch, and with perhaps just a little more of a consistent plot line. I think that this would have gotten me the rest of the way there.
I agree with that. I think there's a sort of a lag in the middle of the movie that kind of pulls me out of it. So I think that probably why why it's not higher on my list.
But it also captures the magic of how movies transformed from silent movie and talkie movie. And that was fun to see a movie about movies about that time. And that is why AFI puts this in their top 10 all time. Brian, you have this at number 13.
Yeah, I mean, this is an excellent movie. It's definitely one of the best musicals of all time. The only thing that this suffers from and why it's not higher on my list is, like musical artists, I would love to see something like this live. Obviously, it's a movie, but I just mean if it were, an actual stage production, I would enjoy it all that much more. No disrespect to the film. It's a phenomenal film. It's just that, like my music, I just prefer it live.
Now, you like wintertime and you like skiing so much. Would you prefer it better if it were singing in the snow?
No, I don't want it to be like a Love Actually bastardization by Bill Nighy, although that part in the movie is hilarious.
Number 6 from 1985, we have the movie Clue. Now, Chad, you've got the high rank on this one. This is your number 3 movie.
Yeah, another one that I hadn't seen before, and I was just so caught off guard by this movie, how funny it was. I immediately turned to my wife and said, we're watching Clue tomorrow night together. Just had seen it for the podcast. I had a great time. She had a great time. And I'm just completely charmed by this movie.
If I recall, you like the witty word,
yes,
the witty words and dialogue.
I love the quick banter and the witty dialogue. Yes, especially the police scenes with the butler.
I have this one at twice. I'm the lowest voter on this one, but I just really enjoy this movie. It is completely enjoyable. It's one of those movies that wasn't fully appreciated at the time, and it has only been it is a cult classic for a comedy. It's grown to be more appreciated through its TV runs, and also putting all 3 alternate endings together is definitely the way to watch this movie, and it wasn't released that way, so shame on them for not putting them all together. It's so much fun to have alternate endings. I actually said this on the podcast. I would love to see a remake of this, just simply because give me more scenarios. This was just so much fun. It's like playing the board game. You have different results, and that somehow captures the fun of the board game. It's hard to capture the feeling of a board game in a movie, but they did it. Mary, you have this one at number 6, also pretty high.
I have so much fun with this movie. I've seen it many times over the years. It's another one of those movies that just comes on TV, and I'm sucked into it every time. It's fantastic. And yeah, it's another movie that's, maybe it has some innuendos, but this movie can be watched by almost any age and enjoyed by just about any age.
Was it PG?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's impressive. I mean, you don't see a lot of PG comedies.
Yeah, I think it's impressive to be able to have a movie that funny and not go to, raunchy humor as a tactic. So that's a particular challenge, and they definitely excelled.
Brian, you had this one at number 15.
It's definitely a charming movie. It's funny, and it's, family friendly, which if you can get both of those, that's just a home run. Huge fan of the board game, and I thought that in terms of all the things that have ever done a movie based on a game, this is definitely higher echelon.
For sure. As we move forward, we have from 2000's Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? We have 2 of you who gave this movie your number 2 ranking, the first of which is Mary. Mary, tell us about Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
This is one of my favorite movies of all time. I've seen it so many times. I can't say enough good things about this movie in terms of the art direction, the storytelling, the acting. It just all comes together in this really unique piece.
I am the low one on this one as well. I have it at 21, and again, I love it. So just being the low man on the totem pole doesn't mean that I don't love it, because it's a great adventure. I don't find there's quite as much humor in it as some do, but I just think it's a great adventure, and it's always fun to see the different characters who they bump into from the past. It's a little bit of Bill and Ted in a way, that you go back and you bump into people, and it's a fun romp through the past. I somehow would like this approach to other time periods as well. Great soundtrack. You guys were talking about Ben-Hur being one of the best soundtracks. This one was another one of the great soundtracks on there. So, Chad, you have this one at number 2, just like Mary did. You must have liked it as well.
I'd never seen it before, and I just fell in love with this movie. I love the soundtrack. I love the blues and the gospel influence. Love the actors, the comedy, the fact that it was based on the Odyssey very loosely, but still you could relate several of the scenes and characters. So that was a lot of fun as a fan of Greek history. Yeah, this was a huge hit for me.
Brian, you have this one at 19.
This is a great movie, great soundtrack. It suffered a little bit from the other movies that are on the list, like we've mentioned several times, but this is a rewatchable movie. You can get into it. It's fun. There's an element of suspense to it, and I can't say enough good things.
Number 4, we're moving up to the top. Pan's Labyrinth from 2006. Mary, you're the high voter on this one at number 4.
This is a dark fantasy that just makes you question what's what's real, what's not real, and it's another one of those films that every time I watch it, I see something new in it that I hadn't seen before. Acting is fantastic. I don't even notice that I'm reading the subtitles because it's just so smooth and effortless of a visual experience. Yeah, another one of my favorite movies.
I'm the low voter on this one as well. 3 in a row for that.
Yeah.
I know. Sorry about that, guys. I have this one at 17, which is still really high, by the way. I loved the World War II setting. Part of the war that I wasn't really familiar with and transporting me to that. But also, it was a really great fantasy. It is a dark fantasy. It was like those old fairy tales that were there is darkness in that, and it's a beautiful direction. Some of the creatures and the crafting on that one were there, and then one of the scariest moments for me has to be the pale man from this movie. So,
Oh, he was a great character.
really scary dude. Great mind. I love Guillermo del Toro. I went out and saw Shape of Water immediately after seeing this one, and I want to complete the library from Guillermo del Toro because I think very highly of him as a director, and this movie is the one that really kicked off my love for him. So, Brian, you have it at 10.
No, this is a fantastic movie. Fantastic in really a lot of the ways that you guys have already mentioned. The dark fantasy is awesome. The makeup, the direction is great. If you're interested in pushing forward with more Del Toro, I actually recommend his fiction as well. He does science fiction, fantasy fiction. He wrote the Strain series, and although the TV show is not great, I highly recommend the books.
I did not know he was a book writer. That's interesting.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, he co-writes it with Chuck Hogan, but yeah, it's still very, very good.
Now, Chad, you have this at number 6.
I'm enchanted by this movie. Beautifully told, and kudos to everyone involved in this movie because the acting was superb. It does have subtitles, so it took me a while to get around to just watching this movie, but I'm so glad I did.
Number 3, the oldest movie we did this year, from 1939, The Wizard of Oz. Mary, you have this as your number 1 movie.
I think it was challenging to even think about putting something else ahead of it. This is a movie that I don't remember life without it existing. It's sort of the movie on which all other movies are judged. Wizard of Oz takes you into a fantasy world, and it's just completely classic, and I think at this point a universal story that everybody can relate to.
This is the only movie that came away with 2 number 1s, but before we go into that, Chad, you gave us a 21.
Yeah, I feel bad for this because
You should.
it's a masterpiece. It really is. It's just one that I don't care to watch very often, and I've seen it quite a bit, and just all the movies ahead of it I would rather watch again.
Okay.
And I know your sticking point with How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, but yeah, I would probably still watch that over Wizard of Oz. I'm a little saturated with it.
Oh my gosh, you did put How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. I somehow forgot that I put it out of my mind that you put it at 19. But
Russell's still offended by this.
See, it's not that you put that at 19. You're allowed to like that, but it's what you then put below that. It's more of the.
That's where all the judgment comes from.
Yeah, this is a Talladega Nights like, this year is egregious. Yeah, it's egregious. You hear me?
It's a masterpiece. I could go without seeing it every 2 or 3 years.
Brian, you have it at number 11.
I'm still reeling for How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days part.
better than Wizard of Oz, apparently.
I would
past
rather
that.
see it, not better. I would rather see it.
They used to do a skit on the Man Show where they would make up fake movie titles and then go like really excessively like into detail on why they wouldn't see the movie. For instance, was I think it was Adam Carolla one time talking about Sister Act 4, and he was like, "You could fill the theater up with beer and have prostitutes drowning in it, and I would not go see that movie." So that's how I feel about How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. So anyway, back to Wizard of Oz. No, this movie's phenomenal. It's nowhere. I don't even like having it in the same sentence as How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Like, I feel like we've done a film like first here by tarnishing the good name of Wizard of Oz by having it in the same realm of conversation as How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
I would rather see Kate Hudson's dog
No.
Oh
Nope.
no! Now you're gonna bash Toto. That's
Nope.
just not
Toto's a
fair.
cute dog.
The dog that peed on everything. I want that one.
Oh man. Okay.
I'm just gonna ruin everything. Sorry,
Wow.
Brian.
Bring
Continue praising this
bring
movie.
it on home, Brian. This is hard. This is hard.
No,
Well,
I'm
I'm not
gonna
even someone who normally likes musicals, and this is my favorite musical, and for sure, and definitely one of my favorite movies. It's...
I'm recusing myself from further discussion of How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
What was it? 21.
He's just going to process.
It's hard to take.
So it's worth noting, though. I think Brian tanked Rat Race from becoming the title holder because I have this Wizard of Oz as my number one movie as well, and it's very possible with the 1, 1, and 11 that this probably would have been as well. So you tanked the Wizard of Oz to a lesser degree than Brian did with Rat Race because his was like number 42, but still with your 21, you've taken the title away from Dorothy and Toto.
I feel a little bit bad about that.
Yeah, it's okay. But for me, this is absolutely enduring. It's enduring across generations who are no longer around at this point. It is got great music. I mean, you hear Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and it's one of those movies that just resonates, and it's because of the movie. And I can't think of hardly any scene in a movie that's quite saw dropping as this transition from black and white to color. It's just one of those magical moments in cinema when Dorothy leaves the black and white house that's fallen in Munchkin Land, and then you see the yellow brick road, and everything's in vibrant, saturated color. The witch is one of the greatest villains of any movie. She's just truly evil. That cackle, Margaret Hamlin, is amazing. And the flying monkeys also. They give you the willies. Great stuff here. I love fantasy. I love musicals. It all comes together here. And Wizard of Oz, good stuff. The good stuff from Kansas. Thank you. Number 2, from 1995, GoldenEye, 007 movie. Brian, you have this one highest at number 3.
This is, I kind of thought that this one might creep up into the top 5. I'm happy it did, but just so our listeners know, this is probably coming from all people who that was probably their first real introduction to a new Bond film. Man, I think it holds up. I think it's a quintessential Bond movie. It's got all the check marks. It's got suave Bond. It's got violence. It's got tech. It's got wittiness. I mean, I don't know what else you need from a movie because that just checks a lot of boxes. We all played the video game. This is probably going to be the most disputed movie on this list by other listeners, especially older ones. But I like giving the caveat of why.
I think that's a good point because it touched our generation, and obviously the 4 of us here are within a year of each other. So, Mary, you have this lowest, which is at 9, which is not low at all. This is how it landed here at number 2. Nobody hates it. So.
Oh, I love this movie. And like Brian said, it was my first real introduction to Bond. I mean, maybe I had seen this one, but this one we went to theaters for, and it was exciting, and started a history of my family going to see Bond movies in the theaters. So it's got great connotation just because of that alone. So the fact that it's down that low on my list isn't a knock to it at all. It's just we've watched some incredible movies this year.
Yeah, Chad, you have this at number 8.
Fry nailed it. I'd seen Bond before quite a bit, even on a 7th grade trip room when we watched Bond movie marathons. But this was the new Bond and my first exposure to the new Bond, and what a bombastic start to Pierce Brosnan. And I was so excited for what would come next, and then but GoldenEye's great.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I think people are hard on Pierce Brosnan at this point.
No, here's the thing. Pierce Brosnan was the best Bond that could have possibly been handed the worst Bond scripts after GoldenEye possible. I feel like he was handed one over-the-top scenario. And Bond's supposed to be a little over the top. I get that. But, I mean, it just got ridiculous at a point.
Yeah, you can't go invisible car and ice castle.
Yeah, it hurts me. They got too popular. They got too repopular, if I can use that as a excuse. And they pushed the envelope in the wrong way, aka Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, and it tipped it the wrong direction. And Daniel Craig's Bond pulled pulled it back in the right way to a degree, but man, Brosnan's Bond was just so Bond.
I have this one at number 7, which is appropriate because it's 007. And I just love this movie. This is just one of these great action movies. It's not just a Bond movie to me. And I love the James Bond series. I cannot wait for the new movie to come out, No Time to Die. I love every Bond movie. And I think it's sad to see Pierce Brosnan in this era kind of, I see his name besmirched a lot as if he was a bad Bond, and I don't like that. I think
It's not his fault.
I don't think that's
It
fair
really
at
is
all.
not his fault. Like, he had so little to do with the garbage movies he was handed. Like, the only thing you can really fault him for is saying, yeah, I'll do it.
GoldenEye is the perfect balance in action, sexiness, the humor that I want to see from Bond, the imagination, and it also didn't necessarily try and completely break the mold and try and reinvent the wheel. I don't ask for that. I'd rather give me just a fun Bond adventure every 2 to 3 years. I don't need you to write an ambitious, mind-blowing script and take 6 years to release a Bond movie. So this is what I want from Bond, and I hope as we go forward we have a star who likes being Bond, so we can have them more often and we can have more movies like GoldenEye, because to me it's the gold standard.
Yeah, it even had gold in the title, and we know that those are just got to be some of the best Bond movies. If it's got gold in the title, it's probably going to be a winner.
Agreed.
Oh, real quick, I just want to say that Pierce Brosnan's quips and back and forth and verbal sparring with Famke Janssen in this is one of the best back and forths in any Bond movie.
All right, and we're going to go into the number 1 movie from our Retro Movie Roundtable 2019 class. It is L.A. Confidential from 1997. Sadly snubbed at the Oscars because Titanic won everything.
Boo.
And it's a shame. Brian, you have this as your number 1 movie, so it looks like you're right. You picked the best movie. It's your number 1. You get the honor of telling us about it first.
Cast, screenplay, huge fan of film, of crime noir. I can watch this movie anytime. I could watch this movie twice in a row. This is like green eggs and ham for me, man. Just yes, I can.
It's taking your breath away. You're having a hard time forming
Like,
full sentences.
I don't know.
You're like big, good, like,
yeah.
love.
I can't get over how, like, and this is a movie I came to late. I didn't see this like anywhere close to when it came out. And when I watched it, I was like, more of that. Where can I find more of this? So, like, obviously, like, Mulholland Drive came not too long after that, and just stuff like this. I'm just like, yep. Even Black Dahlia, Gangster Squad. Like, give me all of this L.A. crime noir. I'll take it.
This is in Brian's wheelhouse. So this movie doesn't have a very low ranking. We have 2 people who gave it a number 8, and I'm one of them. And Mary, you're the other one. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, this is a great film. It's got fantastic acting, and the storytelling is superb. I love and get excited each time I watch this movie about the way the story unfolds. Yeah, it's great.
Chad, you have it at number 7. Why don't you go next?
So I was given 2 movies by Russell that I hadn't seen and wasn't on the podcast, and one was Mr. Nobody. We know how that went. And the other was L.A. Confidential.
How'd it go? Was that another reality where you didn't like it? Maybe this reality you do?
Russell had high hopes for both, but then started moving the scale as we were discussing what I like in movies and what I don't. And it started shifting. He's like, Mr. Nobody might not go well, but you'll like this one. And I wasn't confident after Russell's judgment because I'd seen Mr. Nobody. I was like, I don't like you anymore. This movie blew me away. I was so caught off guard by how good this is. I hadn't seen it until I was 34 years old. So to me, this was like seeing The Departed for the first time.
Yes.
It's a shame that it came out the same year as the Titanic.
Yes.
Because it would have been the one to clean up all the awards, I think.
Movie did not get its credit or its due, and please go see this.
Yeah, and please go back in 97 and just hold it off for 1 year so it can win more awards in 98.
Maybe we can get a time-traveling phone booth and go back and be like, 1998, please.
This movie's so good. I have it as my number 8, but I find myself the whole time going, I was like, this lost to a sinking ship. This lost to a sinking ship. 3 hours.
And they both could have fit on that door. They both could have fit on the door.
Ship.
There was room.
Oh, man.
Awesome.
And no disrespect to the Titanic fans out there, I just love LA Confidential, and my enthusiasm is just as much there as Brian's and Chad's and Mary's. This is why it's our number one. You see, it's funny, like when three of us really love something, whether it be Rat Race or The Shining, somebody's always going to come and say, I hate this. But this is the only one that we've really, truly found full on. The Wizard of Oz was close. Chad wasn't all the way in, but that is why LA Confidential and GoldenEye stand heads and shoulders above the rest. So LA Confidential is our champion from 2019. Makes me excited to think about what we'll see in 2020. Chad, do you want to lead us on some movie superlatives for the year?
Yeah, that would be great. For our first superlative, we're going to go with the best director. So Mary, how about we kick this off with you? Who is your best director from the movies we saw?
That was the easy one for me. Del Toro for Pan's Labyrinth.
That's a good
definitely,
pick.
Yeah, the standout in my mind.
Very good pick.
I like that pick a lot. Yeah.
Russell?
Best director for me is going to be Stanley Kubrick from The Shining.
All right, that's a shame. But...
Did you see that one, Chad?
I've seen it a couple of times.
In seriousness, though, it is very artistically done. The craft level is great on that, as I mentioned before. And to me, it stands above, it transcends the genre in a lot of ways. And it's just a really great, well-made movie. And I'd like to see more horror movies go this direction. Sorry, Chad.
All right, we're going to move on from that bad opinion to Brian, who hopefully has a better one.
Chad's death staring.
My best director is also Stanley Kubrick.
Oh, son of a gun.
Sorry, Chad.
All right, Brian, tell us why you're wrong.
Chad's face palming right now. Literally, for those of you who can't see Chad, he's just face palming.
Yeah. Tell us why you're wrong, Brian. Go ahead.
I am a huge Kubrick fan. If you delete Eyes Wide Shut, this movie was so much fun, and Kubrick is one of those guys that just makes a really well done, crafty, and weird movie, and I can really appreciate it. Del Toro does too. He's easily my number 2 on this.
So, are you going to go with Del Toro or Stanley Kubrick, Chad?
I'm going to go with William Wyler.
Nice.
I just can't get away from what he accomplished with Ben-Hur. It's astonishing. So what he put together is an epic masterpiece. So William Wyler.
Great choice.
Best cast, top to bottom, from this year's selections.
That's hard. We have some fantastic acting all through this list, but in terms of a cast as a whole, I have to go with Oh Brother, Where Art Thou. Even the minor characters are fantastic, relatively big name people who really bring a lot to the table. There's no one in that movie who didn't bring it.
Yeah, that was a great selection. Russell?
I'm going to go with LA Confidential. It was our number 1 movie overall. It was my number 8 movie, but it's a deep, big cast. It doesn't have a central character. It kind of has 3 characters that it focuses on, and the support characters are more weighty than a normal movie supporting roles. So it's an ensemble effort, and that for me is why because it achieved what it did. Russell Crowe, Guy Pearce, James Cromwell is awesome. You got Kim Basinger. It's just amazing cast, top to bottom. And like you said, even smaller roles in this were great and memorable.
It's our number 1 movie for a reason. How about you, Brian?
Russell copied my list.
Oh,
Brian, you may go ahead of me next time.
So, that.
Okay. All right, that's fair. Again, number 1 movie for a reason. For me, I just couldn't get past Clue. It had such a big cast, and every character I enjoyed, and especially Tim Curry, but they all just played off of each other so well, and I felt like they all had fun together, and so I love that cast. Moving on, we'll go to our best actor from this year. Mary?
So, piggybacking on what Chad just said, that Clue had such a great cast, I think Tim Curry stands out as the best actor for me on this list in general, both for Clue and for Rocky Horror Picture Show. He definitely stands out.
Yeah, that's a great selection. Russell, you're best.
I need to let Brian go first.
All right,
I think it's very unlikely that we have the same best actor, but go ahead, Brian.
Russell chose someone from Rat Race, so Brian, go ahead.
This is a little difficult just based on his fall from grace and whatnot, but I went with Kevin Spacey from L.A. Confidential. His character at the time and the way he portrayed him was very compelling to me, especially with how that movie ended, and I won't ruin it here. So yeah, I went with Spacey.
Hey, you can be a best actor and not a good guy. So.
Yeah, it's part of acting, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can act like you're not a bad guy.
It's true. Russell?
This is why I know that Bryan doesn't have this. I went with Tom Hanks in Big.
Okay.
Yeah. And I just think that he nailed the vibrant enthusiasm of a young person in an adult's body. I think he did an amazing job as an actor at watching the way young people are remembering and tapping into that inner child. And again, this movie could have just been a disposable, 13 going on 30 kind of effort. And I believe it is Penny Marshall's direction and Tom Hanks's acting that make this something that has endured and will continue to endure.
Well, I'm going to side with Mary in this debate. It was Tim Curry for me, both for Clue and for Rocky Horror. Rocky Horror, I don't think would be a cult classic without Tim Curry.
He was in The Three Musketeers as well.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right.
I
He's
did
on
forget
this
about
3
that.
I can
times.
be arranged.
Yes. So for all his contributions and being the best part of multiple movies, it's got to be Tim Curry for me.
It has been a stacked year for Mr. Curry.
All
You're right.
for
Yes.
one and more for me.
Although poor Kurt Russell, he was in the most movies and he got passed.
Was he in more than Curry?
I think so. I think he was in 4.
Tombstone Miracle. And anything else?
Backdraft.
Oh, yeah. I don't like that as much. Yeah. 3.
3.
Yeah.
Moving on to our best actress, Mary.
I picked Ivana Bacaro from Pan's Labyrinth. As a young actress, she carried this film, and I can't think of a better person to pick for this.
Really good pick there.
She was
I like
wonderful.
that pick. Yeah.
Russell?
I'm going to go with Kim Basinger. It's a supporting role, but it's really memorable. I mean, she really made this movie. I hate to double dip and go back to LA Confidential, but this best actress helped make that best cast. And then also she did get an Oscar. This is the one Oscar that it did come away with.
She was really good.
She had to fight the whole Titanic off herself to get this one away from James Cameron. So good job, Kim Basinger. You totally deserved it. She was wonderful in this.
She stole it from us. I totally have. I had Mary's pick as well. So I just you guessed and stealing my stuff. Get your hand out of my
I
pocket.
let you go last time.
I'm going to be the third for Ivana Bacaro on Pan's Labyrinth. She, for such a young actress, what a wonderful job she
Chad
did.
never liked young actors either.
Yeah,
Ever.
yeah. Well, she earned it.
She has a sense of sophistication
Holy crap.
in this movie that's
That's a
beyond her
lot
years.
coming from Chad.
Yeah.
For those of you who haven't caught on yet, every young acting performance that you might think that was good young acting, Chad goes terrible.
I like Drew Barrymore, but yes, for the most part, I hate kids. They don't make movies better.
Okay.
There we go.
It's okay. You've only alienated everybody who's ever been a child or will have a child or already has a child.
That's fine.
As
I
well
hate
as
you
anybody who
kids.
likes The Shining.
Yes.
So you've covered all the population.
Yep. Yeah.
You did
just
cover most.
Write
people.
your letters to Retro Movie Roundtable at yahoo.com. That's fine.
Attention, Russell.
Yes. Yes, essential.
By the way, have you seen Solo, a Star Wars movie yet?
I mean, why bring that wrath upon you?
I'm just gonna add that log on the fire.
I will never see that movie. Moving on to best supporting actor or actress who wasn't in Solo.
Oh gosh. This was an incredibly difficult pick because there were so many good people, so many great character actors to choose from, but I went with Ray Bolger, the Scarecrow from The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The physical acting that he does is outstanding.
Yeah, it's one of those guys, he was born to play that role.
So this is a bit of my wheelhouse. I'm totally gonna diverge from what is necessarily the best. I can't help it. Just dive into my favorite. I love Dana Carvey as Garth in Wayne's World.
He says while wearing a flannel shirt.
It's pretty nice. It's comfortable. So my long hair is gone these days, but I love Wayne and Garth. I love every minute of Wayne's World, and as you can tell, that was my overrating compared to the other three of you. So I was an outlier on that one. I'm a positive outlier at least. So, and Dana Carvey is just one of those comedians who I just think he's a golden stand-up comedian and a really talented sketch performer. Wish he had gotten more good vehicles in movies. This one is great for him, and I love it.
All right, Brian, who is your best supporting actor or actress?
I went with Rebecca De Mornay for Three Musketeers. I thought she really added a lot to this movie. Kind of that spy, espionage, darkness that she and Curry really brought to the table, and then how she tied into the overall story I really enjoyed. And I hadn't seen a lot with her in it prior to this one. Of course, I was pretty young when I saw this one too. And just because I had a hard time choosing between the two, I also want to give a nod to Julie Moore from We Were Soldiers.
Rebecca De Mornay pops up in Backdraft as well. So
that's true.
She's a double.
That's true.
She's a double dose this year, and she's you can see her now, and she's Jessica Jones's mother.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, she's not so pleasant there.
No. For me, I had to get someone for my number one in here, so I went with Debbie Reynolds in Singing in the Rain. I really felt like her chemistry and just her spunk helped everything move along with the movie, and I loved her character.
Yeah, that's definitely your AFI safe. Like that was that. Like I said, when I picked Dana Carvey, I knew I was like, there's a lot of good people here, but I just can't help it.
There's a lot of people we're all snubbing here. This is going to be a little bit of an awkward transition for who we're starting with, but Mary, who is your sexiest female?
So I'm going to kick this off. That's all right. I think Kim Basinger is, she's the obvious choice to me. She's incredibly classy and sophisticated in her role in LA Confidential. So yeah, Kim Basinger.
Okay. Lovely choice.
It is definitely an honorable mention for sure. I went with Famke Janssen in Goldeneye.
Okay, Xena on a top.
Yes,
what a ridiculous name.
Yes, and it's her best performance, or I should say, it's her peak performance in terms of aesthetics. So good job for her on this one. But I do want to give a second runner-up for Jacqueline Bisset in Bullet.
Okay, very good. Brian.
I went with Sophie Marceau from Braveheart.
That's a good choice.
She's pretty.
I feel like I have to duck, but I shouldn't for this opinion, but I'm going with Kate Hudson.
Oh, that explains many things. You know what, Brian? We don't have to rack our brains any longer.
I just called that one.
Oh, man, it's the yellow dress. It's that yellow dress.
I've already recused myself from this topic.
Russell's head is in his hand right now.
I get it now. I didn't get it before, but 19. Ahead of the Wizard of Oz.
She's gorgeous, so.
Okay.
She works for me.
All right.
So I guess I think Chad's or my How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days would be Serendipity with Kate Beckinsale.
Yeah. Yep. That's fair. I was actually going to make a joke of, sorry, Fry, there's no Kate Beckinsale on this year's selections. Otherwise, that would have been this.
He scoured the IMDb deep cuts to make sure she didn't have a non-speaking role in something.
Was she in a cameo in the background? Or...
Yeah. Lady at bar in the background.
Yeah. Maybe more in Mary's wheelhouse. We'll move on to our sexiest male.
To me, this was an obvious pick. He appears on our countdown twice. Hugh Jackman.
Okay,
Hugh Jackman, Australian.
Wolverine, very good choice.
Yeah. So your opinion matters more on this one.
Yes. Absolutely.
I'm gonna go Pierce Brosnan. He's James Bond. He's the guy that every guy wants to be. Like I said, this is peak Brosnan as Bond. So he has got the style. I love it. Busting through that wall in a tank and straightening his cuff, and straightening his tie a little bit. You know, I love it that no matter how intense the action gets going, he's gonna look good doing it.
Russell's swooning a little bit over here. So.
Yeah,
man crush.
That's right.
Brian?
Well, I cooled it off when I saw Mamma Mia, and I saw him sing. I was like, oh, you clearly don't have everything.
So, Brian, who is your man crush in this?
Also,
Josh Hartnett?
Did I say?
Also. I was really expecting a Josh Hartnett.
Oh, man.
I can feel Brian shaking his fist.
When this happens, you have to invert the circle. at some point, Chad.
For the bus here. I wasn't expecting to do these, so
You're doing a great job.
I am failing miserably, and I hope you all are enjoying it. Brian, would you like to add any other qualities of Pierce Brosnan? Is it the eyes? Is it the...
It's the watch, isn't it?
I actually think he's also aged well. He is still a handsome man today.
Yeah, I agree. I can't believe I'm going to be the only one to say this, but George Clooney. I mean, yeah, the Dapper Dan. No,
Doesn't like fop. I don't know. I know that much. So yeah.
Yeah. So
He's the only one that we mentioned who's I think been a multi-time people's like sexiest man in the world or
Yeah.
alive or.
No, I
alive in the
have
world?
to say that I was expecting Chad to say Matthew McConaughey.
That would also make sense. That would make even more sense because like Kate Hudson would like knock it up to like around like 25, but then McConaughey would knock it up to the full 19.
if my wife had gotten a vote, yes, he would have been number one.
All right.
All right, moving on. The biggest thrill from this year's selections, Mary.
Yeah, I hope this doesn't have any spoiler connotation to it, but I found that the scene with the thin man played by Doug Jones in Pan's Labyrinth is the most thrilling scene.
Oh, that's a
For
wonderful
me.
choice.
That was a good
On
choice.
this list.
I didn't go that angle, but yeah.
I didn't make it a nominee in my head, but now that you said it, that's a really
the
good
scene
choice.
that gets my heart racing the fastest, and to me, that's an effective thrill.
Brian needs to get this before
I'd like
me,
to
by the
change
way.
my vote, yes.
Reverse the
Brian,
circle.
would you like to steal Russell's thunder here?
I actually went with something a little different here. It's not a thrill movie, but I was thrilled to watch it, and I went with Cool Runnings.
Oh, yes.
Nice.
Very good, Mom.
Yeah. This is a thrilling movie, so I'm gonna go with the chase scene in Bullet.
Okay.
The 11-minute long
McQueen.
Steve McQueen chase scene, loved it, and a nod to the chariot race from Ben-Hur.
Oh, that's another good one. I actually didn't consider that. So-
Super thrilling.
So I went with the tank scene from GoldenEye. Just
Oh,
as,
I love that too.
Yeah, that's a good one.
as soon as he busts through that wall and they hit the 007 theme, just
Da-na, da-na, da-na.
this is how you use the music, and it's great. I love it.
Yes, absolutely.
Can I
Those are
just
all
give
great picks, by the way.
a nod to Billy Bob Thornton going to town on that trunk with
Yes.
a golf club? I have to say,
Yeah.
Right.
That was the most therapeutic moment.
You
Like,
hear
you
that,
just wanna
Roy?
do-
He brought your thumb.
Well, that could be eligible for our biggest laugh, which is our next category. Mary?
So biggest laugh, although I did think about the Billy Bob Thornton and the golf club, but hands down, the air traffic control tower scene in Rat Race, that's probably the funniest I've ever laughed at a movie. I'm pretty sure that when I saw it the first time, I couldn't breathe.
I agree.
I agree, but I prepared a backup because I know Chad
You
and
knew I was
Chad and I
gonna
have
pick
already
that.
had this superlative and just conversations because it's the top laugh of any movie ever, anywhere. Our listeners by far know for sure that we have it now, so I came prepared
All right.
with a number 2. That's my interesting answer that will surprise and shock people maybe.
All right, we'll proceed.
Bohemian Rhapsody from Wayne's World.
That's a good one.
The car ride, I can't watch this without just getting a smile so big on my face that it hurts and it laughs. I start laughing before the stuff even happens. Like when he walks up to the car and he's like, is he gonna spew? I give you a no spew a guarantee. And like when it's so funny and you know everything that's gonna happen and it still makes you laugh, that's when you know it's imprinted on you.
Brian, what's your biggest laugh? Rat Race, right?
Yeah, Rat Race, right? The Air Tower?
No, it's going to be Oliver Platt in Ice Harvest. Basically all of the bar scenes. Charlie Ogles, yo-ho-ho, mofo.
That was an unforeseen. I didn't see that one coming. I thought you were going to go for the trunk with the beating of the trunk. I thought for sure that would be that.
Just the whole mob lawyer thing, and he's like, I really wish you wouldn't do that. And he's a huge mob lawyer. That whole sequence was
He
hilarious.
loves his Oliver Platt. I'm
is
really
true.
shocked Oliver Platt didn't get your best supporting on the air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, so I too wrote down the air traffic control tower scene from Rat Race as my biggest laugh, but in the interest of keeping things interesting, Tim Curry, when he's running down the the recreation of the murder in Clue, and he's running from room to room, and he's got a knife raised up, and he's just madly running, and he's squeaking because he got wet earlier, and he's doing kind of these impressions and just this quick frenetic energy. It made me laugh the entire time.
I like it when he knocks Mr. Green on the ground. He's like, will you stop doing that? No. And like knocks him right back down.
I don't laugh out loud very much during movies, but that scene gets me. A sadder category, but we'll go with didn't quite hold up over time. Mary?
Yeah, I agree. This category kind of makes me sad, and I had to pick X-Men, although I love X-Men so much. Just the characters and the story, this movie just didn't age well in its effects.
Russell is clapping over there.
That's your pick as well.
It is, but I've got a runner-up ready to go. But X-Men's one of those ones that also gradually, as I didn't watch it this time and be like, oh, this movie's not as good as I remembered. I've seen it along the way several times, so I've had the slow deconstruction, brick by brick, on that one. So Demolition Man is a movie I hadn't seen before, but I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more had I seen it at the time. It's campy, so it's got that going in its favor, but I also just don't think that I don't think it's as sharp as it could be because of some of that. So I'm going to say Demolition Man didn't hold up.
Seashells don't hold up for you.
What do they do? Biggest mystery, biggest unsolved mystery. That's not a superlative, but I'll just throw that out there. That's my biggest mystery coming out of this year.
All right, Brian, what didn't hold up for you?
I'm going to go with War Games. Not because the movie itself didn't hold up, but anytime you use a lot of tech in a movie, you're dating yourself. And just from that standpoint, I would say that's probably the one.
The tech's so charming. You didn't like the Whopper going...
Life has nothing to do with it. I'm just saying that...
Yeah, it's tic-tac-toe rendered slowly.
Somehow when you said like has nothing to do with it, I was picturing Clint Eastwood. Deserves got nothing to do with it.
Very nice. For me, sadly, it's Ace Ventura.
Oh, really?
Oh, that's a good pick, too.
Yeah, it is a good pick.
It's just not as funny as when I was a kid. It makes me sad, but it doesn't hold up as well.
The transphobic ending.
Well, there's that too.
Cultural sensitivity, yeah.
But it's not as funny.
Laces out!
Okay.
All right. Best movie you had never seen before.
I had seen bits and pieces of Ben-Hur over the years, but I had never seen it all the way through, so I'm going to have to go with Ben-Hur. That was quite an epic film, and I wish I'd seen it earlier.
I feel like Brian, because that would have also, just like the biggest laugh, that one also would have been mine. But that's okay.
Yeah, sorry, I'm taking your picks now.
I've prepared backups for everything, so my second pick on this one is Maltese Falcon.
Okay. Yeah, I hadn't seen that either. That was a wonderful film.
And kudos to Sleuth as well, because I never would have seen that movie had it not been for the recommendation by Katie, who came on the show, and really glad I watched it, because I never even would have known about its existence.
Brian, I know this is a tougher one, but what movie had you not seen before?
Bullet, and not for lack of trying. Apparently at some point I had purchased the movie and literally not gotten around to watching it. But yeah, definitely Bullet.
For me, it was Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? It reminds me of home, even though it was set in Mississippi. It reminds me of the people I grew up with, not necessarily GW, but the family members and the Pinch and Elkview setting that I was familiar with. So it was just charming and nostalgic for me.
Yeah.
Most improved by returning to it this year.
Well, I talked about this earlier with The Shining. I think the first time I saw it, I was not prepared for what kind of movie it really was. So
Another one
Chad
for Chad
shaking his head.
You're just going to have to eat this one.
It gets worse every showing. All right, proceed. I'm sorry, Russell interrupted. I just wanted to shake my head in silence. Russell throws me under the bus again. Proceed as to why this movie is better now.
The movie, well, I was, like I said, prepared for a slasher movie, and this is certainly not a slasher movie, so you got to sit down and be prepared for an artful, slow unfolding of a story. So when I sat down in the right frame of mind to watch it, I did really appreciate it on a second watch.
I don't want to say anything, Russell. Okay, moving on to you.
The biggest surprise for me, or the biggest, I guess, improvement would be Coming to America. I have seen it before, but somehow I'd never taken the time to fully put it all together, as well as not watch it on TV, broken up with commercials and editing. It's a much better movie than I thought. It's really charming, and I kind of called it a modern fairy tale or a romance movie as well. And it does a lot of the things that sometimes I think that I don't like those things, but actually I do like those things when they're done like this way.
Yeah, it's up there with cool runnings of movies I didn't expect to hold up.
But yeah, both of those do hold up for sure.
Brian?
I went with Miracle on this. I already liked it quite a bit, but I hadn't seen it in several years. And oddly enough, I ended up watching it before I knew we were doing it for the podcast. And I was like, oh, this movie's awesome. And then we did it for the podcast, so I watched it again. And I think I've probably watched it 2 or 3 more times since Disney Plus dropped.
Do you believe in miracles?
That's a great movie. For me, it was Ben-Hur. I talked about it on the podcast. I felt like
I thought you had it in high esteem coming in, though.
Well, I had Miracle.
I appreciate it more having done the research for it. Yeah, I mean, like Fry said, I didn't dislike the movie before, but I don't think I retained it all when I first saw it, or at least saw it heavily edited, because I do not remember 3 hours and 45 minutes. I just have such an appreciation for what that movie is, and yeah, it's even better than I remembered.
Absolutely. So, thank you so much, Chad, for running that part of the show. This will now conclude the year that was 2019. Oh, what a year it was! And we look forward to doing more in 2020. And I want to thank both Chad and Brian here, because I want everybody to listen to the show to know you wouldn't have a show right now if it wasn't for these guys. These are some of my best friends coming on the show with me. This is why I do the show every week, so I get to hang out with these guys. Brian came in like January, and Chad came in early summer, late spring, and the show got so much better when these guys came on board, and it's been so much fun to do it with these guys, and they bring a lot of fun takes, and it would be so boring if everybody liked The Shining. And if everybody liked Rat Race. So I love you guys, and thank you for doing this. This is so much fun, and I look forward to doing this for another year.
Yep.
And Mary,
same to you, man.
Thank you for being there every step of the way, watching every single one of these with me, because you've made this fun for me as well.
Yeah, I guess I'm sort of on the periphery of the show, but I'm there watching all the movies, and hopefully I can bring a female voice every once in a while, and make sure that you guys know that Hugh Jackman is in fact the sexiest man on this list.
I see it.
He's 1B. That's fine.
He's pretty.
And a special shout out to Sarah for taking care of Mr. Baby at this point. So he is, you've probably been hearing it the whole time, but just in case you're wondering, we're not torturing our son in the background. He's just having a real hard night. And Sarah is a saint for watching him. So thank you so much, Chad.
Yeah, they're watching The Shining downstairs, and he feels similar.
I hope you're not showing my 4-month-old The Shining.
He won't remember it. It's fine.
He's got to wait a while to get to that one.
Hello there, and here is your short list. First episode of 2020. All of these movies are the new retro class, and they are from the year 2010. So, with no further ado, your 2010 options are option number 1, True Grit. A stubborn teenager enlists the help of a tough U.S. Marshal to track down her father's murderer. Option number 2, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Scott Pilgrim must defeat his new girlfriend's 7 evil exes in order to win her heart. And option number 3, The American. An assassin hides out in Italy for one last assignment. This wasn't recorded live, so the selection that Chad and Brian helped us make was Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. So please tune in next time for 2020, the new retro, and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. As always, be good to each other and watch more movies. Brian?
Human beings are the only creatures on Earth that claim a god, and the only living things that behave like they haven't got one.